Tony Beets has been leading the charge in the Klondike this season, proving once again why he is known as the king of the Klondike so far. His mining operations have yielded an astonishing 2,914 ounces of gold, valued at more than $77 million. With his decades of experience, Tony knows that gold mining is a race against time and the elements. His crew has been pushing through harsh conditions to maintain production. But the frozen ground has made the challenge even tougher. Left it. Music. Up, his son Mike has been running the TRL at Paradise Hill around the clock, making sure gold keeps flowing in. Meanwhile, his nephew Mike has been managing operations at Indian River, where he had just gotten a lot back up and running after a week-long shutdown. The operation was running smoothly and the pay dirt was moving fast. However, Tony faced a serious problem. He was running dangerously low on good ground to mine. To keep things moving, Tony had to find a new sweet spot for gold. The solution: a simple $2 gold pan. He scouted around the site, searching for any signs that would indicate a promising new pay zone. After examining the ground, he found encouraging results, confirming that there was still gold to be extracted. Without hesitation, he called in his crew to begin the process of stripping away the overburden and creating a new wash plant pad for Sloot. This new location, dubbed Corner Cut, was the next big hope for Tony's season. Could you bring one excavator to the wall cut, please? Could you bring one excavator to the wall cut, please? Okay, thank you. In order to make the move, cousin Mike had to shut down the 45-ton wash plant at Comeback Cut and transport it to the new site. This was no small task. The frozen rough terrain made moving such heavy equipment incredibly challenging. The operation was led by a massive dozer which struggled to move through the tough ground. I got to make sure that this plan doesn't slide sideways, because once it's going towards the hole on the left, there are no stopping. Despite the harsh conditions, Tony's nephew Mike managed to successfully transport the wash plant to its new destination without any major setbacks. With the equipment in place, the next step was to build up a pay pile. However, just as things started to move forward, the team ran into permafrost. The frozen ground was nearly impenetrable, bringing excavation to a halt. With the site effectively frozen solid, Tony's plan was put on hold. The only option was to wait for the ground to thaw, but time was running out. Waiting for the ground to thaw was not ideal, as each passing day meant potential revenue loss. The crew brainstormed ways to speed up the process, but the reality was that mining in extreme cold came with unavoidable setbacks. Right now, if we don't find any Todd ground, we won't be doing any sling to SL plans down. So now you lose everything that you made early in the spring until we find some Todd fader and you're shut down. The alternative was to focus more effort on Paradise Hill, where Mike had been keeping the TRL running around the clock. However, shifting resources to one site came with risks: overworking equipment, running through pay dirt too quickly, and potentially leaving the operation vulnerable if any unexpected breakdowns occurred. It kind of sucks, because that means you're going to be sure to pay right. Yeah, waiting for that's going to take forever. Yeah, so it's all up. Yeah, despite the uncertainty, Tony remained confident that his years of experience would guide him through the situation. The key was patience and knowing when to push forward and when to hold back. For now, the team had no choice but to rely on the high-yielding TRL at Paradise Hill, while keeping a close eye on Indian River. If the ground thawed in time, they could make up for lost gold, but if it didn't, they would need to pivot their strategy to keep the season profitable. While Tony's operations at Indian River were temporarily stalled, the weekly weigh-in became the focus. With so much uncertainty, the gold totals would reveal whether or not his team was still on track for a successful season. The results showed that despite the setbacks, the Beets crew was still in a strong position. The Comeback Cut produced 75.66 of gold, totaling $190,000. However, the real success came from Paradise Hill, where the TRL brought in a massive 37,434 worth $936,000. So you got $1 million on the table just about. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Even though Frozen Ground had halted mining at Indian River, Tommy's son Mike had stepped up in a big way, making sure the family didn't fall behind. With nearly $1 million in gold from the TRL alone, the week was still a success. However, Tony knew that if the permafrost continued to slow things down, his season could take a serious hit. While Tony Beets was battling Frozen Ground, Schneabel was locked in his own fight goal of reaching 10,000 ounces by the end of the season. He and his crew were working tirelessly to make up for early losses. They had all 3 of their wash plants running at full capacity, knowing that every single ounce mattered at Dominion Creek. Parker's crew was splitting their focus between multiple locations. They were processing top-layer pay dirt at the bridge cut while also working to mine out the first half of the long cut. It was a high-risk, high-reward strategy, but Parker knew that staying on course was the only way to reach his goal. One of Parker's big moves for the week involved relocating wash plant rocks, and the plan was to move it to a new pad, allowing it to flow directly into an existing pond. This would improve efficiency, but the team had only 24 hours to complete the move. We got our water pump in the lens installed. We've got the shaker deck, the conveyors. Let's do this. The operation hit a brief setback when air was sucked into a pump due to a loose intake hose. However, the issue was quickly identified and fixed, allowing the team to get rocks and back up and running. Let's do it. Meanwhile, newcomer Tav Peterson was promoted from running rock trucks to feeding rocks, and it was a step up in responsibility, and he was eager to prove himself. However, he ran into an issue almost immediately, a jam in the hopper. At first, he tried to clear it himself with a shovel, but the blockage persisted. Realizing he needed help, he called in foreman Mitch Blaska, who discovered that a large rock was causing the problem. Fortunately, because Tav reported the issue early, they were able to fix it without major downtime. At the weekly weigh-in, Parker's results showed steady progress. Roxanne's work at the long cut produced 222.000 Big Red, followed with 82.80, bringing in another $227,000. Finally, Bob at Ken and Stewart's site yielded 34,680, adding $867,000 to the total. While Parker was pleased with the results, he knew they still had a long way to go if they wanted to hit 10,000 ounces by the end of the season. For Rick, Ness this season was quickly becoming a do-or-die situation. He had managed to accumulate nearly 1,000 ounces, but with his current cut running dry, he needed to find Richard ground fast. If he didn't, he risked ending his season early. Rick turned his attention to a new location near the bench cut known as the Edge Cut. The ground was frozen, and he knew he had to be careful. Instead of jumping in blindly, he took the time to dig a test sample first. 5 hours later, the test results came in. There was some gold in the sample, but it wasn't a guaranteed win. Despite this, Rick decided to move forward and began stripping the overburden. As his crew dug deeper, doubts began to creep in. The lack of significant gravel layers suggested that the site might not have enough gold to be worth mining. To be certain, Rick decided to run another test. If the results weren't strong, he would be forced to abandon the Edge Cut altogether. While waiting, Rick took a moment to showcase his personal rock collection, including a unique Wong rock and a pair of stone sandals. But when the test results came in, reality hit hard. The sample had produced only 2.55 Oz, worth just $6,500. That was far below the 10 ounces he needed to justify continuing with such disappointing results. Rick was left with a tough decision. If he could find a better pay zone, his season might be over. As the season continued, each miner faced enormous challenges. Tony Beets was battling frozen ground and struggling to keep operations running. Parker Schneabel was working around the clock to reach his 10,000-ounce target. Rick Ness was fighting to stay in the game. The Klondike is unforgiving and success is never guaranteed, but with millions of dollars on the line, there was no room for failure. Every decision, every move, and every ounce of gold mattered.